Good morning. I wanted to show a little prototype I've been working on to start the discussion on where to go from here in the FEM workbench. I have a few things I like to optimize to make the workflow faster, but as these are quite big changes, I think we need to have a broader discussion first on where do we want to go, how it should look like in the end, so that any kind of implementation would make sense. Now I have a little prototype here, because showing is always better than just discussing, so that you guys can have an idea what I'm talking about. I implemented some changes to show just so a little bit the benefits and have it as a basis for discussion. Now the code is horrendous. That will not drop any time soon, if at all, anywhere. It's really just to show how it works or how it could work, getting the imagination going for me to see how I could implement stuff. But definitely nothing that is in any way reasonable to put into the FEM workbench directly. But yeah, let's show the idea. You see here in the analysis, analysis now has two groups, a geometry group and a mesh group by default, like many other FEM analysis tools. And as an example to show you guys what I imagine is, I've took this FEM model that was shown in the forum a while ago. It's an electromagnetic model that is quite interesting because it is a compact model, but it also has an air volume around, and you need to mesh this air volume with all these solids, and that is a quite difficult thing to do with the current workflow. Now, what my idea about the workflow is, again, this geometry group, and this group is a group for keeping geometry operations, so we get some more operations on how to work on that. For example, I can click here, now import geometry. I can select all these things that make up the model. For now I have keep separated at these parts and click OK. And what we get now is a new visualization of the geometry. You see here now the import operation in the geometry folder. And now the next new thing is here I have a new task panel, and that is the FEM view. And here you see now your everything that is within your FEM model and what makes up your FEM model. Right now you see all the stuff here, components and solids. Components for me are things that are unconnected. A component is everything within one part that has no connection to everything else. So right now you see you have 6 components, 6 things that are not connected. And the nice thing is now I can start hiding them. And that is quite important for this model, because I do not want to see the outer shell. I want to work with the inner parts, and I can show it again, and I can hide other stuff all the way around, and that is actually quite nice to work with this model. I can, for example, also this, and you see there is an overlay, so you see what you've hidden. You can deactivate that overlay, you can activate it again, so that's actually quite nice working with that. But now, of course, for such a model, we do not want to have 6 components, separated solids which are not connected. We want to connect them, and that's quite a usual task, what we usually do in FreeCAD with the Boolean fragments. I've implemented that in the import settings. You can import them separated, but also embed them within each other. And if we now look at the model, you see there's only why doesn't it show correctly? That's because I had the whole component hidden, and then because now there's only one component, everything was hidden. So we activate the component. You see now there's only one, because with this new setting everything is connected. You have now basically all these solids within the components, but these solids are connected at their interfaces. And that is now quite nice. That is what you want for electromagnetic simulations. You can have these solids all with different materials. You should use the typical things we do with FEM, but also visualize them and select them way easier. We can, of course, also see the air volume, but we don't need it. We can look at the individual things quite nicely. The next thing I've implemented are clipping planes. Clipping planes I feel are also like being able to select and unselect stuff quite important to pre-process the model. And you see here that works well. And what you also see, and that is I think quite interesting, is that it's not hollow. These whatever I clip here is with a filled in inner part. And now the interesting thing is, if I hover over it, you see here I select, or it pre-selects the face, and I can select the face and pre-select this face, select this face, that all works. But if I go hover over the inner part of a solid, I can select the whole solid. You see it here, it's selected now. And I can select this solid. Yeah, so and that makes it super easy with the clipping plane also to go in and select solids. Super nice. And as you also seen, I can also use this FEM view here to select solids. That makes it way easier now for constrained application, material application, to select stuff. Well, that's a quite nice thing. I can remove the clipping plane. What we also discuss often need often is to partition certain models. So I added a little partition command. What I can do here is I have a plane. I can add this plane as my tool to partition, and then I can select whatever I want to partition. And I want now, for example, to partition not the whole blue solid, but this face. And then what I simply do is add face, and now it should partition that face within. Yeah, and now you can see this face is split up into multiple subfaces, but it's still all one solid, and that's the color stays blue because it's all solid too, but that face is now split into multiple faces. I can change that, remove this one. I can add solid number 2. Now the solid is selected, and now you see it splits the solid, but now we have more, right? It's not the same color anymore. Different color now means it's all within the same component, everything connected, but different colors means they are individual solids. And that works quite well. So the idea here, and that is for discussion, the idea here is to implement different pre-process options that are quite specific to FEM, that are where we use other FreeCAD tools, which are often workarounds, and they work somehow, but they are not very elegant, they are not very powerful. So here we could have a lot of tools that are very specific for our use cases. Defeaturing tools, for example, partition tools. I've only implemented a super basic version, but we could have quite a lot of powerful things here. And it would all end up in one geometry, and we can look, select, and inspect this geometry quite well. Okay, then go on. From the geometry we can go to the mesh. For the mesh now, we click G-mesh, where we calculate a standard mesh. And now it doesn't not directly shown because we are still in the geometry part, but we can now switch easily to the mesh. Now we see the mesh, and you see two things. For one, okay, that's the mesh you expect, but also the colors are kept, right? So it's the same component and element logic we had before with the geometry. Now we also now have with the mesh. I can add everything in the mesh. So this is now the air volume. I can remove parts of the mesh if I want. For example, this part. Now this is removed. That works exactly the same way with the mesh, and also the clipping. As you can see here, clipping works also with the mesh exactly like in the geometry. And that makes it now very easy to look into and inspect your mesh quality. And that's quite a hassle in FreeCAD right now, inspecting your mesh quality, seeing if you need to refine stuff, how does it look in the inside. Super difficult, and this implementation makes it quite easy. For one, because you can enable and disable whole parts of the mesh, but also because you have the clipping, and you can look inside it. The mesh is clipped by whole elements at the moment. Right now here in this example it looks a bit weird, but that is because the mesh is super coarse, and then of course with these coarse meshes it's quite a funny clipping result. I can switch back and forth between the geometry part, which uses exactly the same clipping plane, mesh part. You can see both uses the same clipping, same color. So it's very easy now to see what has been meshed in which way. I can also again in the mesh put in the overlay if I want to see what would actually be here. For example, here is geometry. I can look at that stuff and then see it meshed. So the whole idea here is giving way better selection options, giving better understanding where we are on the model, what is what, how to select stuff, what is the mesh quality, how can we improve the mesh. And I think, I personally feel that works quite nice. We can still, of course, use the standard refinements. If we select the G-mesh, for example, we can use the mesh refinement. We can add a solid, for example, here now solid 3. No, let's do solid 4, the orange one. We can make that one then, of course, better in mesh quality, just the same as before, but with easier selection. And now we see this one is nicer, easier selection, easier visualization. I think that improves the workflow a lot. Now the discussion here, why this is in an extra group and not directly in the FEM G-mesh, that the reason for that is actually that I think we should have, for example, the option to only mesh certain components. We could have multiple components in the model. Some I want to have with G-mesh meshed, some I want to have with NetGAN. So I want to have here this mesh group be able to have multiple mesh sources, and then the mesh group itself is the overall mesh, combining G-mesh meshes, NetGAN meshes, maybe even imported meshes. Another discussion I think we should have is, do we want to make it selectable? In the implementation I found that it would be quite simple to make this selectable just the way geometry is selectable. Right here I can hover over faces, edges. I could do the same for the meshes with the mesh groups. I could hover and show, oh, you're over this face mesh group, you're over this edge mesh group. That would be quite easy to implement, so we could have a full mesh selection next to the geometry selection. That is something we should discuss about if we want that for the future. I think Mario is quite fond of that, or roughly of that idea, because he has quite a few ideas about groups. And that would be nice, because then we could import meshes also in this group. We import a mesh, right? We have a new source here. So this mesh brings its own group, which is not backed by geometry, but it could be selectable easily in the FEM view, and then the FreeCAD tools could use it. So that's a big point to discuss. Also, something what I think is nice with this geometry and mesh group in the future, what I want to look at is import other analyzers. I want to have to be able to import or link to another analyzers, and these groups import the geometry from the other analyzers, import the mesh from the other analyzers, and also import the constraints and materials from the other analyzers. Now think about if you have repetitive tasks, right? You have certain elements which are repeated quite often in a model. You set it up once with geometry, mesh, and constraint, and then just link to it from this analysis. And I think that is another use case I want to use these groups for. But of course, that's a big change in how things work. That's a big change also in the visualization. We would need to do, or the implementation does everything itself. It's VTK-based. VTK-based implementation, it's a lot of work. We do not use stuff like the normal part geometry. That's all it's a custom implementation. It's not too much code, it's not too much work, but it's something, of course, we have then to handle and to work on. But I think with our special selection needs, like with the solids, like with then components, connected, not connected stuff, I think there's no way around. Currently, FEM uses quite a few workarounds in visualization and selection, which are a little bit ugly. This makes selection so much easier and so much nicer. But it's not doable with a standard part feature. We need our own visualization for that. But it comes with drawbacks, and that is mostly implementation effort. Yeah, all in all, I've also added a little side panel here that is not really useful at the moment. I was thinking about getting here more information about geometry, about mesh, not implemented. We could think about that. And of course the big change here is now the groups, geometry groups, mesh group, and this little new view here, where we could select, where we could color, where we could add widgets. That's the best way I found to look into the model, having the separated view. I like it a lot. During working with it, I find it quite efficient, but we need to discuss if that is something we want to have. It is dockable like everything else. You can have it as a normal dock window, but no, the task should stay here. But still, it is a workflow that may not be perfect. And maybe we have better ideas. Maybe we should, next to geometry and mesh, also put result in here. I don't know. A lot of options, a lot of things we should think about before implementing, and think about before finalizing. Because once we start in that direction, I think a lot is hinging on that. But yeah, let me know what you think about it. Other ideas, we could throw it all away, do it differently. But I think we would need to have something that makes FEM more efficient and more, especially the geometry part, more efficient, more usable than all the workarounds we currently use. But I'm open for all new ideas, for all other ideas, and in the end we should have a good common understanding that I would really like. So, have a nice day, and hear you soon.